If you've been following along on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, this one won't surprise you, but still a great story that we're about to tell you about the latest Penn State football commitment. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Ryan Snyder, recruiting reporter for Blue White Illustrated, is here to tell you that story. So, Ryan, this one's been a long one coming. It's heated up in the last couple of days. Who is the latest Nittany Lion to join the class of 2026?
Yeah, this was our surprise. We were chatting about at the end of the last podcast. There's been a lot of questions about that one on the message boards and whatnot, who we were talking about. And it's Ben Eziuka, offensive lineman out of Detroit. It's Detroit Catholic Central. I'm so used to saying Pittsburgh Central Catholic that I always say the wrong way, but it's Detroit Catholic Central. 6'3", 295-pound interior offensive lineman. He's also a pretty good wrestler. And there's some background there that we'll dig into here in the coming days over on the site of his background of wrestling and how that helped him eventually get to this point. But I think the main story here, as far as how he became the next Nittany Lion commit, really centers around him coming to camp last July. Comes to camp at a little under 6'3", 325 pounds. And, when you're interior lineman, a little under 6'3" at that size, as a rising junior, by the way, so he was still, coming off his sophomore year, that's a little concerning, just because
Right.
if he continues to go in the wrong direction, you talk about a 6'2.5", 350 potential size offensive lineman. And that's not what coaches want to see these days. They want to see guys who can move. So a lot of credit to Eziuka, right? He took what Trautwein's advice was, dropped 30 pounds. He's now down around 295 in the offseason. And on top of that, he's a guy who went out and earned it. And I think those stories are also are really fun to watch, right? We always talk about the 5 stars and the guys who are these freak athletes and all these different things, but the guys who go out and earn it at camp, oftentimes those guys have a lot of success at Penn State. We can point to quite a few over the years who, are in a similar situation. So, of course, he comes back this weekend. Camp with Trautwein, improved his testing numbers in every single way, while he's also still just as strong as he has been before with dropping that weight. So I think it's a fun story. Whether he's a center or a guard at the next level, time will tell. I would lean a little bit more towards guards at the time being, but we'll see. With Penn State, they love moving guys around and trying different things. So, but I think this is an exciting commitment for Penn State, and one that fans will look right now and see, he's in the 740s nationally. He's a 3-star, all these different sites. But, let's remember, how many guys were mid 3 stars, when they commit to Penn State. They go out and have great senior years, and by the end, they rank much higher. Michael Trautwein, I remember, last year, I think when he committed, he was ranked in the thousands, it was like 1,100 or so. And then obviously he eventually moved his way up with really good senior film. And this is the guy that Trautwein believes will do the same. So Penn State's really happy to pick him up, and he's a bright kid too. I think that's the other major thing I probably should have hit on already, is that, there's a handful of interior linemen that I think Penn State has interest in this class. And Eziuka is one of the brighter ones, a guy that they believe who can come in and really understand and grasp the details that it takes to play at this level. That's something that multiple people have, spoken very highly of. They think he's the kind of guy who has the work ethic and the smarts to really take it or grasp the offense and eventually take his game to another level. So Penn State's happy to have him. 3rd offensive lineman now on board. I think it's really kind of more like 4. I think Marlon Bright's pretty much on board, but we're going to have to wait till July 5th for that announcement. But Penn State's happy to get their first true interior lineman, although, as you pointed out, T. Frank, there's quite a few guys who can move around.
Yeah, and I'll get to some of my thoughts here in just one second, but I'm happy to announce here for the first time on the Committed Video series, we have a sponsor on the show. That is Freedom Financial. So Freedom Financial is owned and operated by Josh Fallenstein, who is not just a Penn State football fan, but he's a member of BlueWhiteIllustrated.com and a fan of the show. So we're welcoming in one of our own. Please treat him well as he's treated us well. So if you support the channel, you can consider supporting him as well. Freedom Financial is comprised of 3 different businesses. So today I'm telling you just about one of them, but you check all of them out. So if you're a small business owner, I'm talking to you right now. Health Insurance Group and Health Services. You ever spent time on the phone wasting your precious time trying to talk to a company that is on a robo line? Well, this is the thing. Josh has said to me before that small businesses are the most underserved group of people when it comes to insurance and with all of these services, because it's just one big business talking to another big business right over your head and you're left out. Well, guess what? There's no AI here. You can call them and they will settle your issues with your insurances and help you set all of those programs up. They can do disability insurance, Medicare, life insurance, all those things, and handle it for you. So you can go back to the thing. What was it again? Yeah, running your business and keeping it alive, which is the number one thing you're interested in doing. So take all of this stuff and give it to them so they can handle it for you. If that is something that can interest you, or if you need business tax prep, something else he can do for you as well, give them a call. Use this number, 833-670-0306. That's 833-670-0306, or info@freedominsurance.life. That's info@freedominsurance.life. And you can check more out at freedominsurance.life. That's the website URL. So appreciate Josh and Freedom Financial for being a part of the BWI family. Now back to we're talking about Ben Eziuka, who's part of the Penn State football family in the class of 2026. Ryan, I want to ask you one follow-up question to what we were just talking about, because it reminded me a lot of Donovan Harbor. Now, Donovan Harbor was a little bit higher ranked during his junior season and had some of those weight issues. Ben Eziuka, I think, is a little bit more underrated. But is there a comparison, and do you think there's a lesson learned from that process with Donnie Harbor that they've applied to Ben Eziuka?
Yeah, they similar from the perspective they find guys who are, one, intelligent, right? Want to take the coaching. I think that was always a key focal point with Harbor. Now Harbor was also like 350, I think, at one point, and now he
was
dropped
very big.
closer. Yeah, so that was a little bit different size wise, but height wise, they're both pretty similar. So I think those are probably the main things. But again, to me, it comes back to guys that are just coachable and pretty good fundamentally too. I mean, you've watched more of his film than I have, but
he's the cleanest offensive lineman from that perspective I've seen in a while. Like, he's
really good.
Very good at football. Yeah,
good. Okay, good to hear. Yeah, I mean, those are kind of the main two takeaways, right? Just this guys who have a solid fundamental base. Certainly, all of these high school prospects can improve, but also just understanding what it takes to the next level and the commitment that you're going to have to show. I mean, I was talking to Marlon Brightstad the other day, and he was hosted by Michael Trautwein this weekend, and he was talking about how Marlon got the opportunity to learn about the homework that Penn State's Trautwein basically gives to Bright, or to Trautman, who just got here back in January. And basically it's just consistently kind of learning all these different things. It's the nuance of these offensive playbooks are way more in depth than I think people understand. And at the end of the day, they think Ben Eziuka is a guy who can absolutely take that and will run with it, and really do his best to push himself to the highest level. And whatever that may end up being, maybe will be an NFL player one day, maybe not, who knows? But at the end of the day, these are solid prospects who are taking the coaching, taking the time to take what these obviously highly paid, well-recognized offensive line coaches like Trautwein is, and taking their advice and running with it. And, when you do that and then you come back to camp and you prove, hey, not only have I've done everything you've asked me for, but I'm a better athlete now and I'm just as strong as I've ever been. It's how could Penn State say no to that?
I want to, so we've started at the end essentially here from the football perspective. So I want to rewind a little bit and show some of the highlights from 2024 to give you kind of some context and talk about the football player involved in this, in Ben Eziuka. And I'll be honest here, starting out, seeing some of the things from him on the highlights and then digging into the full game film before I really started. And it was all this past weekend where I was doing my full work on him. I was a little nervous. So like I tried my best here to, point out the positive things, and it didn't feel like he was a guy that was on that level of a Penn State football commit under Phil Trautwein, but he quickly won me over because, as I mentioned, he's one of the better, cleaner prospects from understanding football, being where he needs to be. He's really good at pulling. So there's just certain things on his film where you just look at, like, he's always where he's supposed to be. He's a good pass protector, even though I think in that perspective, it's a high school situation, despite being in Detroit with really good competition that challenged him at times with some stunts and some twists and things. He generally knew where to be. And I think that backs up what you were talking about of this is a really smart kid, never busts an assignment. It's always looking for work. And technically was pretty good. Now, I'm not an expert at offensive line, but I've watched Phil Trautwein coach these guys, so I've picked up a couple pointers here and there. And his positional skills are very high floor. The question coming into this weekend was, He's just not a great athlete on film. And you can see even here some of the movement stuff. Physically, he moves well. He just doesn't have that explosiveness, that poppiness in his movement that you would say, okay, what's the upside of Ben Eziuka at Penn State? Because he's pretty good at football. He's already 300 and whatever pounds, and sure, he can get stronger, but is there anywhere to go on a 6'3" frame? And Penn State typically doesn't recruit guys that are like that. Even Michael Trautwein was 280 some pounds and was, had more room to develop. Felt like a guy that had a decently high floor, but a guy that did not have a whole lot of ceiling. And then that was not the guy that arrived at Penn State. I'm going to put these up again. His 40 time, his 40 here, super impressive. This guy doesn't move like the guy you just saw on film. So as you mentioned, he put in all of that work. He's never, I bet this was the first time he snapped the ball, by the way. So snapping was not necessarily his strength during the one-on-ones, but we talked about this on the BWI live show on Tuesday. He did not lose any reps during his one-on-ones. Wasn't the best competition in the world, but he went through this. We've been calling this Franklin's Gauntlet. You go through every single position back to back to back to back from from right tackle to right guard to center to left guard to left tackle. And he was lights out. He was able to play a bunch of positions he's never played before. And you can just see the smoothness, the control. His ability to play football at that level is just really impressive. So I would say now, after watching him in person, I still would say, like, he's not 6'6". He's not going to be a guy that's super lanky and all those things, but he doesn't lack length. He doesn't lack any one particular thing. And he really filled in that gaping hole of what's his athleticism like. This is just a rock solid commitment. I don't know that he may end up being a 4-star. I don't necessarily care, because he was a Big Ten starting offensive lineman from the film and watching him in his full development during his junior season. And it was just, is he a plus starting lineman? Is he a Penn State lineman? And he answered that, I think, emphatically with a yes. Obviously, he answered a yes because Penn State took his commitment, and we're talking about him here on the show. So just from this perspective, as gratifying as you just talked about from that perspective of earning it over a year, the football side of it was equally enjoyable as well.
I don't know what else to say, buddy. You hit on it all right there. I feel like we've hit on it the best we can. But
yeah,
true interior lineman. And the thing that I'll add here is just now, I'm kind of have Marlon Bright a little bit penciled into this class. We'll see. He's not official. I get that. But that's, if we're penciling him in, that's 4 now. And here you are in a situation where you got Carter Scruggs still out there. Obviously, you have Grayson McHugh still out there. Marky Walbridge just took an official visit this past weekend. Penn State thinks they're right in the mix there with him. How many linemen can they take? I think I was saying for a long time 5. I felt like 5 was the number. Now I'm starting to think 6. So we got some big visits coming up. This is the weekend with Grayson McHugh, and then Carter Scruggs will be the weekend after that. Of course, Manuel Iheanacho. There's a lot of other guys out there that Penn State's going to host. Thomas Wilder, I believe, is coming in this weekend as well. There's certainly other players, but to me, we'll say 3.5. I think they're really at 4, but you get my point. It's about Grayson McHugh.
Lean on that a little harder. Why don't you?
It's always funny trying to talk around that sometimes. But to me, it's about Grayson McHugh. It's about Carter Scruggs. It's about Marky Walbridge. We know those 3 have been at the top of their board for quite some time now. Guys who all fit Penn State really well, and obviously flash on film and testing in a lot of different ways. So getting at least one of those guys on board, and then we'll see. Maybe they can get 2, or maybe somebody else emerges like a JV Shabazz, a Thomas Wilder. I could go on and on as far as go down that offensive line list. I think I still got like 9 more guys to take official visits here in the coming weeks. So we'll see where things go.
Yeah, and if just one last thing from me, if you're talking about expanding the view, you have your interior guy that can, I think, eventually, as you mentioned, can play center in Ben Eziuka. The one thing I'd say you really want to add to this group is a pure Trautwein tackle. And by that, I mean the elite feet with the elite length, putting that all together. I think that points to particularly one player that you just mentioned, but I think there's a couple guys there on that list. So if you're leaning towards what are they looking for, what's left in this particular class from a balance perspective, need, fit, etc., they're going to take guys that are the best and that have versatility. But I think we've seen pretty clearly they like tackles that are tackles. And, I think there's room for 1, if not 2 more of those. So we'll follow all of that along here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. When the next one drops, we'll tell you more about Freedom Financial. We'll tell you about that player. We'll tell you about all this stuff here on the YouTube channel. So please subscribe, like, all those things, as we always tell you on these videos. If you enjoyed the content, the conversation, there's more of it coming, but only if you keep supporting us and you keep the love coming our way, so that they don't pull the plug on me and they put me back into the film closet until football season. So until the next time we have a conversation, we'll be back here on the Blue Whale Illustrated YouTube channel.